Let's be real. The status quo has created a lot of the world's problems, and we can't rely on business as usual to get us out of this mess we're in. That's why we're partnering with Think NATO this season. It's a dead simple 4-step process to blow open conventional thinking and get to truly unique and innovative ideas. It's not about finding the perfect answer. It's about starting with the right questions, pushing the edges, and then taking action. You can learn more about Think NATO at thinknato.com. That's ThinkNADO.com. Think NATO, the positive action engine.
Most designers passionate about climate hit the same wall: decision makers who just don't prioritize sustainability. I sit down with Carly, an OG climate designers volunteer for the New York City chapter. We break down why leading with environmental benefits often backfires. We explore how the most effective climate solutions are sold on financial value, not green credentials. One of the ideas we explore is a training framework to help designers master the psychology of persuasion. Understanding human motivations might be more critical to climate action than any technical solution. So, ready to rethink how we communicate climate? Let's jump in. Hey, Carly, how's it going?
It is going well. How's it going with you?
Not bad, not bad. Thanks for joining me. I'm excited to jump into our episode here. Carly, you've been with Climate Designers for a good while now, so I'm excited to dive into this Think NATO process with you. Before we move on, would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and your role within Climate Designers.
Sure. I'm Carly. I'm a product designer based in New York. I have been generally involved with climate designers for about 5 years now. I think I was one of the early attendees to things, although I didn't realize how new you guys were at the time. And I've been the New York City Chapter Leader since 2021.
Very cool. Very cool. A question we love to ask every guest before we get started: how is climate action showing up in your work?
At the moment, that's a very easy answer because I am leading product design at a renewable energy company.
Super easy. That's awesome. And that's a relatively newish job, right?
Yeah, I think I'm entering my 7th month.
Okay. Oh, wow. 7 months? Man.
Yeah, that
Time
really
is
flew by. It
flying.
feels newer than it really is.
I remember when you got your previous climate
Yeah,
design job too. Geez. Yeah, it's been a while. What
yeah.
is
I guess I'm
time?
coming
What
up
is time?
on have I passed 3 years of working in climate now consistently? I think I'm at 3.5 maybe.
There you go. There you go. I will say this, Carly, and I have not forgot about this. I remember you reached out to us when you first applied to your first climate design job, and you felt very comfortable and excited to put climate designer in your cover letter.
Yes, I did that. I don't think I got that job specific. No, I definitely didn't get that job specifically, but yeah, I was very excited about that. I
Very
remember as
cool.
well.
Nice, nice, awesome. Okay, so let's get to it. So our main challenge for today is an interesting one, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas. So, how can designers nudge decision makers towards climate action? So, I'll unpack that a little bit. Decision makers, they can be leaders, founders, managers, even clients. For those of you who are listening, how do you nudge your clients towards climate action? And then climate action, we hear that phrase all the time. That could be big, that could be small, that could be dependent on what your studio does, that could be dependent on what you do within your team, that could be dependent on the services that your company offers. So again, how can designers nudge decision makers towards climate action? Any initial just thoughts or comments about that challenge, Carly?
Yeah, this is pretty much my whole life, day to day. My current role and my previous role were both at climate tech companies. So not a lot of nudging that I need to do for the decision makers within the company itself. These are mission-driven organizations, and we're all kind of on the same page. But very much this is something that we need to think about for our customers because we are selling a product, a big part of which is inherently taking climate action. The thing that's really interesting for me as somebody who cares very deeply about climate change as an issue is how little so many people care about it as an issue in terms of it being a motivator for both business and personal financial decisions. Most people just don't rank it too highly, whether that's out of just being overwhelmed, not being able to make it a priority, not having the financial resources to make it a priority, or whatever the case may be. So now working for a renewable energy company, a big part of our mission is making energy in general not only cleaner, but more accessible to everybody. And renewables are, if you have the infrastructure to deliver them, essentially free when they are available. So in theory, renewable energy should be the cheapest form of energy. And interestingly, a lot of the work that we do for both of our commercial and residential customers is around showing just the value of ourselves as an energy company versus as a climate positive organization. The sustainability aspect of it is almost a footnote, really, which is, again, was interesting for me to get used to with a renewable energy company. But there is so much financial value, business value, other types of value that come out of this. And that is what we focus on with our customers, essentially meeting them where they're at. If you are solving a problem for somebody, they're going to be interested in it. So if you can solve a problem for somebody, whether that's lowering their utility bill or whatever the case may be, and your solution is inherently climate positive, it becomes very easy to nudge decision makers towards climate action.
Wow, there's so much there that we can unpack. I would love to have you think about everything you shared and bring that into the conversation, and what from what you shared can be applied to and maybe can't be applied to designers then, right? Because, the podcast is for designers, and, the prompt is how can designers nudge decision makers towards climate action? Everything you shared, what lessons, insights that you've been learning and seeing over the last couple of years can be brought into this, knowing that we're speaking to designers specifically?
Yeah. So in my mind, and I'm biased towards product design because that's what I do, but designers are the people who are determining how an audience interacts with a product, how it functions, what it does, how it should work. And it is also a designer's responsibility to understand their users' motivations and knowing what problems you need to solve for somebody is a huge part of the design process. I did tremendous work around the different personas who are our potential energy customers and what's important to them. And it was really fascinating to learn how you can get so many different types of people interested in, putting solar on their roofs, installing a battery in their homes, going with a totally renewable energy plan for reasons completely unrelated to the environment. Yeah. And that all came down to understanding their needs, understanding their wants, and then applying that to the products that we're offering.
So let's take some of that into the Think Native process. Let's get into step one, wait, why? So this is when we question reality. We're going to question everything around our current state, the status quo. We're going to question this like a relentless toddler. We're going to call out the obvious So, based on the challenge, how can designers nudge decision makers towards climate action? Let's call out just what are we seeing right now? What's the current state around you and your colleagues and the company you work with? So, for example, if I want to start off the wait why step, wait, why are we seeing designers continuing to practice in this business as usual framework when literally our world is on fire? That might be, maybe a bit dramatic there, but, that's just calling out what we're seeing right now.
Wait, why are designers so focused on standard best practices when maybe those best practices need to be shaken up?
That's a good one. Wait, why are designers shy? Is shy the right word? Like, why are they maybe timid, right? Maybe are they timid? Are designers timid to speak up?
I think they can be.
Yeah, are they and shy might be just because it might seem like a silly word to use, but the reason why I brought that up is because maybe they're learning about climate on their own time, but maybe they don't feel comfortable and confident to bring things like this up. So maybe less comfortable speaking up about this topic.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I will call back to how I felt very strongly before I coincidentally discovered climate designers and say, wait, why don't we think of design as a field that is inherently related to climate action?
Wait, why are design schools not preparing designers who will be future leaders with this information? And I know as a design educator part-time, I do bring a lot of design education into these conversations. So I feel like a broken record, but in many cases, design education is the root of our industry, right? Many of us have gone through and will continue to go through some sort of structured design education. So a lot of the prompts that we're speaking about on these episodes are the result of where we learned where many of us learned design. And in most cases, it's some sort of formal design school.
Wait, why are the new companies that are innovating in the climate space still thinking of design as kind of a luxury to be added on later? I've noticed I have spent my entire career in startups. I didn't do that on purpose. It just kind of happened. But a theme I have noticed is definitely that companies tend to start with, if we're talking about product specifically, starting with product and engineering, or a lot even start with sales and the whole product is kind of an afterthought. But a recurring theme is the design function tends to be added on significantly later. And I think people think of design as pixels and visual aspects and things like that. And it is so much more than that. And I would love it if that was more widely understood.
Yeah, preach. Exactly. So you're making me think one last wait why before we move on. Wait, why are decision makers still unaware of the value that designers can bring into their company and willing to listen to their expertise and suggestions? I mean, again, that's a whole other episode, man. this is
And
some
I think that's
juicy
where a lot
stuff
of the
here.
shyness comes from that you mentioned, is
Right.
just being accustomed to not being taken seriously.
And that's just not solely specific to climate companies. That's just business in general,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So let's move on to step 2. Maybe it's possible. So this is where we start to explore possibilities. The word maybe gives us the freedom to link unlikely outcomes, goals, or possibilities to do something else. So in this step, Carly, we're not coming up with solutions just yet. That's going to be step 3. But step 2 is really just kind of exploring what could happen based on what we talked about in step 1 there.
Okay. Something that I think about all the time. Maybe it's possible to make the climate positive solution the financially positive solution in every case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's possible to educate founders of all stripes about the value of design.
Yeah, maybe it's possible to get a deeper understanding of where people who are disinclined to climate action are at and figure out how to meet them there.
Maybe it's possible to create resources around psychology for designers to learn from so that they have better ways of using language and persuasion and just frameworks to have these types of conversations to then nudge those decision makers.
Yeah, that's huge. I think I see a lot of failed opportunities with polarizing communication. And I feel like that is also something that is very design influenced. Maybe it's possible to integrate the sustainability function at a corporation with the design function. I see it so much more often as more of a like data or financial role or something entirely independent. And that is important when it comes to things like reporting, but how much more impactful could a sustainability function at a business be if there was more design thinking involved with it?
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Man, so many of these can just be their own episodes.
You're welcome.
Maybe we'll come back. Maybe Carly, you'll come back and we can unpack some of these. Okay, so let's move on to step 3 here. Before we do that, this is a very important step in the Think Native process. I'm going to randomly pull out 2 sets of cards, and we're going to use these cards to come up with ideas for the step 3. These cards are going to help us move past our biases to allow the most creative, outlandish, and wild ideas to come out. Without doing this, we're going to just go into our mental filing cabinet and come up with expected ideas. We're going to inject our biases and produce, normal-ish ideas, nothing too crazy, right? Nothing too interesting. And so, Carly, we can either take these cards literally or we can use them as inspiration. So with that, I'm going to have you pick the first card out of the set. So I'm holding up 3 cards on camera here. We have left, middle, and right. I guess my left and right. So out of the 3, Carly, pick a card.
Let's go right.
All right. We got a gorilla.
Okay.
Photo of a gorilla. We have a photo of a gorilla looking off camera against a rock facade. Perfect. All right.
Excellent.
Okay. Second set, same instructions.
The middle.
Okay. We have the word severe.
Oh boy.
So severe gorilla. Okay, so Carly, with every guest, you have the option to swap out just one of the cards. And then if you want to do that, whichever card you picked in replacement of that, we'll have to use that one. So do you want to keep these or do you want to swap one of them out?
Severe is bumming me out. Let's swap that.
Okay, so left or right?
Left.
Hard.
That's what I
Hard gorilla. Okay. So again, we can use these literally, or we can just use them as inspiration. We can totally riff off of these. We don't have to literally, use them in the idea. But again, this is just a starting point to help our brains start from a different place, right? As opposed to just, again, going back to our mental filing cabinet and picking expected ideas here. So step 3, Carly, is what if. This is the bloom part of it all, right? The first few steps we talked about, that's just kind of talking about the status quo, talking about business as usual. That is the doom part. We're recognizing that some of these things some of the systems that we're working within, some of the infrastructure that we're working in or living in is just not really helpful or very supportive of what we need to do, right? So the what if step is the bloom part of doom and bloom. This is the creative engine behind all of this, right? We want to dream big here. This allows us to expand our imaginations with unexpected connections. So with all of that, let's start thinking about how hard Gorilla can show up in creating an idea that speaks to the challenge, which is how can designers nudge decision makers towards climate action?
The first thing that comes to mind is how impressed we are when primates learn human things. So
Mm,
even though it's hard for us with all of our biases and so-called intelligence, what if we could also learn new things to a degree that really impressed each other, throwing those biases and preconceived notions and status quo away?
what does that celebration look like?
Oh boy. I mean, I get very excited when somebody thinks about something they've never thought of before. And
Okay.
it aligns with a more positive future. I am a big fan of the behavioral science concept of envisioning the future that you want versus being motivated by fear as a motivator to get people to strive towards making a change. To me, that's all about learning new, unexpected things and surprising each other with what we can know and do. And I'd love to see that come to fruition.
Yeah, it's the hopeful future that we've all have in our minds what we would like to create, but not many of us are able to share that out verbally, visually. I think we might have mentioned solar punk a few times in previous episodes, but this concept of illustrating a positive, healthy, thriving world, whether it's through art, design, literature, music, there's so many ways to represent that. I want to go back to the celebration thing. So what if there's a universal gesture every time a designer pushes an idea forward and actually it gets implemented? Like I'm thinking of the high five. Like
Yeah.
I'm imagining designers in an office, in a studio, and then one of them or maybe the team succeeds in nudging their manager or a client into a positive direction. What is the equivalent of a high five in this case? Like, can we create our own universal gesture, right? Like, what is a high five anyway? Like, is it it's a hand signal? Is it like, what's the technical term of a high five or a thumbs up?
I guess it is a hand signal. I don't know
You
what else I
know?
would.
Or a peace sign or something. I don't know. I mean, of course, this is the fun, weird part of the think narrative process. So, like, can we as climate designers create a hand gesture that a designer does when they are successful in nudging a decision maker? So,
Yeah. What if we made the difficult decision to focus more on our sort of primitive needs that we require to sustain life than cling on to our comforts and conveniences? And what role could designers play in that? Granted, I'm sure because of my personal interests, am fed a lot of this content on my algorithms, but homesteading and becoming more self-sufficient with your own food and leaving the corporate world to move to a rural area and have some chickens is like, it feels to me like it's gaining popularity amongst younger people for good reason. It's something I fantasize about regularly. But, when I see videos and things on Instagram that make that lifestyle look so attractive, that's selling a lifestyle that is more sustainable, is selling anything as something that is something that's traditionally been the job of a designer. Same thing with instructing people how to do things, designing instructions and communicating how to do something well is a big responsibility of designers and requires good design thinking to do effectively. So, what if we could use designers' expertise to both, help educate people into having these kinds of skills that we haven't needed in many generations, but also sell a more climate positive lifestyle as something that looks really great and attractive.
And how does a hard gorilla come into that? Like if
I
we
would
had
think
to,
that changing your lifestyle is very hard. And the gorilla is what reminded me of the more primitive versions of ourselves.
yeah. Well, if we had to wrap up this like into something, right?
Yeah.
Like, like a 30-second pitch of a product service experience, what is that, right? And again, keeping in mind that we're trying to help designers nudge decision makers so that we can all live in that world that you're talking about, right? So what is the vehicle, all of the ideas that we've been sharing so far, how do we bring it down to earth and like come up with that vehicle, the thing that allows the designers to do that so that we can
Mm.
we can aim for that lifestyle?
Mm. Again, it comes down to understanding a user problem. And like I know that's very UX jargon and it doesn't cover every aspect of the very broad field of design, but people have nothing but problems.
Sure.
We're struggling financially, we're struggling with isolation, we're struggling with mental health. You can pick and choose the problems that could be solved with some of these things, and then how do you as a designer convince a user that something would solve this problem? And if the decision maker on the company level is confident that that is the solution to this problem is something that is going to bring them revenue, it's easy to bring them on board. And then if a consumer is feeling that pain point keenly enough, they're going to seek to alleviate it. I hate to distill it down to a simple matter of revenue, but the reality is that we live in late stage capitalism. And as idealistic as I am at heart, I also think that leveraging the system is going to be how we affect change the fastest.
Right. Yeah, I'm nodding my head in agreement. I'm still missing the thing though. How do we deliver this? Is this an online course? Is this an event series? Is this through training? Is this through some sort of like, do we partner up with, as climate designers, do we partner up with existing organizations to kind of support each other in delivering the processes, the frameworks, the points that you're making in a way that designers and design teams, independent designers working with clients can level up their communication skills, their persuasion skills to then start nudging these folks, right? Like if we had to wrap this up in something, what does that look like?
Yeah, I love the idea of some kind of course or online seminar, something in that vein. And also like a repeatable framework template that, you can throw into the Figma community or some tool that designers use to start off the brainstorming process. I think so much of the user discovery process is UX design 101, and we consider ourselves experts in that, and we don't think very deeply about it anymore. I mean, we think deeply about it every day, but when was the last time you took a step back and re-examined your relationship to user discovery and your own biases with user discovery? And I see a lot of people, I'll say designers, especially in the social good space, who and it's understandable, we're all so sad and scared and desperate to affect change and frustrated with the people who either don't care or are on the total opposite side, that, we're conveying that desperation in our communication more than we are thinking about the audience. And I think that goes for every social good issue, not just climate related things. And it would benefit us to sort of break down our thinking again and go through a re-education on some of those communication techniques, especially as things in the world change and people just get more and more polarized. There is middle ground, and people are just becoming more loath to stand on it because of what they perceive that means. But, you got to be able to communicate with people, and you got to be able to solve what they think their problems are in order to affect change. And I think, just like revisiting that, the basics of communication with a lens of educating on that specifically would be very beneficial to a lot of designers.
I think this is a perfect time to segue into our last step, try this. And so with everything that we've been talking about over the last few minutes, this idea of a training course of some sort, right? This education platform, what would we want to do to get this off the ground, right? So the try this step is when we break down our big ideas into these smaller actions that we can try, quote unquote, on Monday, using minimal resources to see what gains traction. And so what's the thing that we can do to kind of test this out, right? And of course, we should all do our own proper research to ensure that what we're actually trying is the better option. We're just spitballing here. We can probably unpack this even more and figure out if this is the most appropriate step or not, and actually would address the problem. But because this is a fun brainstorm episode, we would want to just, figure out how do we take the last couple minutes of this training course conversation, and how do we get this thing off the ground? What do we want to call it? What's the first small bet that we can make to see if this thing is even viable or not?
Yeah. The first thing that popped into my head is a homework assignment more than the course itself.
Sure.
But, what if you had to sell a sustainable product without mentioning sustainability? What would you do? Anything to get designers to practice reframing the problem in terms of not what, the benefit close to their heart is, but the problem the user has and how you're meeting them where they're at. That could be a takeaway brainstorming thought for, an hour-long webinar where we talk about this type of communication. It could be a homework assignment for a design class in a school. It could be an assignment for a boot camp. It could fit in anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. The design educator in me is like, oh man, maybe I should have put that into an actual assignment. I'm also wondering, another try this idea that we can test out on Monday would be to put together existing resources as a package for folks to just learn on their own. What are the bits and pieces that we can bring under a whether it's a website or even a Notion page. I mean, a Notion page, Google Doc would be the easiest thing to do, right? To just start putting things together, and then not just highlighting the links to those external resources, but having a short description of just why one would want to read this book or listen to this podcast or read this article in relation to being a designer trying to push climate action within their company, right? So I'm sure with me, you, the rest of the climate designers team, I'm sure we can come up with some sort of super simple Google Doc or Notion page in maybe 2 hours, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then maybe the call to action could be your homework assignment where they can then do the thing, right? And we can then have them submit it back, or some sort of way to measure what they did and the fact that they did it, itself. And maybe we call it Hard Gorilla as the name. I don't know. I'm again, as I do this every episode, I try to bring it back to what are the visuals? What are the what's the tagline? What's the look and feel and the voice and tone around all this too, as a way to think about how to wrap this up into a package.
I mean, trying to pretend that sustainability isn't the most important thing in the world and something sustainable is not about sustainability is very hard for me and makes me feel like a grumpy gorilla.
Well, but I share very similar thoughts, Carly. I say this all the time. Like one of the big lessons I learned early on as a designer in climate, I was actually talking to a regenerative farmer who lives and works in the Central Valley, and we were having a conversation at a conference, and he said, the quickest way to have a farmer turn their back on you and walk away during a conversation is to bring up the phrase climate change.
Mhm.
And so I've been saying this for years. How do we talk about it without talking about it?
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I do it is talking about all the benefits that come from this whole, all the positive things, right? There's that famous illustration sketch. It might have been on like the New Yorker or something. Now you can find it online. It's 2 or 3 scientists on a stage in an auditorium full of people, and they have all the positive benefits of if we were to actually, solve all this stuff and address it. And then there's the one person in the crowd with a speech bubble. But what if it's all still a hoax? It's like, dude, like you should want this stuff. You should want these positive benefits.
Yeah. And people do. People want them. And they unfortunately also really want to connect with other people about their ideals, whatever those ideals are. If they perceive something as going against their ideals, they're going to show a lot of resistance, which is why, unfortunately, ideals have to be left out of it.
Which is also why our climate breakdown, our climate emergency is such a clusterfuck of so many both external factors and internal being us. We're messy people to begin with. I mean, are we even the right species to tackle this? I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know, man. I mean, we're wrapping up here. Again, Carly, we should definitely bring you back on to unpack a lot of the things discussed here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I like this idea of just some sort of simple training package thing, and then we start with just educating folks on what they need to consider when it comes to tapping into their primal instincts, right? And supporting them in nudging, persuading the people that they work with. Carly, fun stuff. Before we wrap up, anything you want to leave us with? You want to plug anything? Any idea we maybe overlooked, or anything that you're up to in your personal life?
I just had a really cool event with my chapter last week. We did an art tour walk, like street art walk, that was guided by a guy named Rich Gar, who is a member of my community garden. And we just kind of got to chatting about this one day, and I thought it would be an amazing event for climate designers, and it was. And we learned a lot about the area around the Gowanus Canal. And for those not from the New York area, the Gowanus Canal is a small body of water in Brooklyn that is the single most polluted body of water in the world. And there have been absolutely tremendous efforts to clean it up. And it is a real struggle. And there are very brave and persistent people keeping at it. So going back to the prompt of hard, this is definitely a hard job that requires a lot of stubbornness. But I am not affiliated with this project, and I'm doing a terrible plug of it, but there is a documentary film called Gowanus Current that I'm sure is available online that I learned about on this walk, and I would recommend checking it out.
Very cool. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. We'll put some of those links in the show notes. And for those who are listening who live in and around New York City, definitely sign up for the New York City chapter and hang out with Carly and do some really fun stuff around the city.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah. Carly, thanks for joining. This was fun.
Absolutely. I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
We know many designers care deeply about our climate emergency, but they're stuck working and living in systems that prioritize short-term gains over long-term survival. The conversation with Carly revealed that people don't make decisions based on environmental benefits. They make decisions based on problems they need solved. Every day, designers influence how millions interact with products and services. Yet most designers lack the psychological tools to effectively advocate for sustainable solutions within their organizations. The real opportunity isn't in preaching to the converted, it's in understanding that renewable energy wins when it's cheaper, sustainable products succeed when they solve real problems, and climate action advances when it aligns with human motivations. We're living in late-stage capitalism. The question isn't whether we can change the system overnight, it's whether we can leverage it strategically while there's still time. Designers have that power. Will we use it?
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Doom and Bloom. A big thank you to the incredible team behind the podcast, Camille Graham, Jacqueline Demchek, Holden Hardcastle, and our music producer, Albert Paul. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a comment. And definitely share it with someone who can use a little bloom in their life. Follow us on Instagram at climatedesignersorg, and don't forget to tag us in your projects. We'd love to see how our episodes inspire you. You can also email us at hello@climatedesigners.org to share how you're turning inspiration into action. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, it's Eric from the Climify podcast. Are you feeling overwhelmed by climate doom? I am. That's why this season on Climify, I'm talking to 6 incredible women who are authors, CEOs, and everyday change makers who are tackling climate change with a side of optimism. They are proof there's real hope and real action happening right now. So listen to Climify wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Climify Podcast. Let's get inspired together.